In the North Atlantic, the year is 895 AD. Following his victories abroad, King Arvandil and his jerk brother Fjolnir bring chests full of wealth back to their realm. Amleth, who receives a unique necklace that Arvandil stole from a prince he killed, and his wife Gudrun are reunited with Arvandil. Additionally, Fjolnir gets to see his infant son Thorir again, but his mood soon deteriorates after Hymir, the court jester, teases him. Arvandil spends some time with Gudrun after the banquet, showing her his wounds. Gudrun is concerned. Later that evening, Arvandil brings Amleth to the temple, where the youngster would undergo a spiritual rite to formally become a man. In order to be granted the knowledge of the tribe, Amleth must make a vow to live honorably and exact revenge on his father should he ever fall into the hands of the enemy. This is done while the father and son channel their inner wolves. After Hymir gives him the drink, Amleth experiences a number of hallucinations, including seeing the complete family tree when he touches his father's wound. A squad of masked warriors on horseback ambush them as they leave the temple in the morning. Amleth tries to assist, but Arvandil orders him to go. The child watches from behind a rock as his father is struck by several arrows. The group's leader then removes his disguise to identify himself as Fjolnir, who kills his brother to succeed him as king. He then dispatches his troops to track down Amleth, who flees farther into the jungle. When Finner unexpectedly discovers him, Amleth uses a knife to hack off his nose. When Amleth returns to his town a short while later, Fjolnir is capturing a yelling Gudrun, and troops are murdering anyone who continues to support Arvandil. Finner informs Fjolnir that Amleth is dead. Amleth decides he has had enough and heads to the seaside to steal a boat while making a vow to exact revenge on his father and save his mother. After many years, an adult Amleth is now living as a berserker with a Viking tribe in the land of the Rus. Amleth walks away from the festivities following the successful invasion of Gardariki and discovers a temple with a seeress inside. Amleth is reminded of his vow of vengeance by this seeress, who also foretells his victory. He must travel to the realm of the north, where Fjolnir presently resides, in order for it to occur. In order to find a fated blade that would equal his fury, he must also follow a vixen. After explaining that she is only assisting him since his destiny is entwined with a maiden king, the seeress vanishes. Amleth uses the opportunity to learn more about his uncle the following morning after learning that the slaves they have taken would be brought to Iceland to work for Fjolnir. Just then, Amleth spots a raven. He interprets it as a sign, recalling that his father was once known as the Raven King. Developing a plan is simple. Amleth cuts his hair and marks his chest with the slave mark. Olga, who identifies herself as a sorceress, meets him there. Even though she is aware that Amleth is a true Northman, she nevertheless shows him kindness and even gives him consolation when his dreams at night are plagued by images of Olga, the past, and the future. The party makes it safely to Iceland despite the ship being battered by a storm en route. Finner picks them up at the coast, binds them all, and leads them to Fjolnir's farm, where he lives with an adult Thorir and his second son, a small boy named Gunnar. Amleth introduces himself with a false identity and strikes the man next to him to demonstrate his power because Fjolnir is not impressed by how feeble these slaves appear and wants to send them away. Fjolnir, who shows special interest in Olga, decides to keep him and selects 2 men for the fields and a few maids for his wife. Amleth tries to take a knife on his first night at the farm, but he is diverted when he spots a vixen on the field, as the seeress had foreseen, indicating that he is headed in the right direction. The following day, Amleth cooperates and works hard as a slave, allowing him to enter Fjolnir's house and learn the startling truth. Gudrun is present, healthy. As Fjolnir's new wife, she was the one who gave birth to Gunnar. Olga then follows up with him to see whether he has obtained any information. Soldiers arrive to take her away when they notice her leaving her post. Amleth pursues the vixen as night comes and discovers a he-witch in a cave. This man knows Amleth right away and demonstrates to him that he has preserved Hymir's head ever since Fjolnir killed him. In order to convey Amleth the story of the fabled sword, Droger, which can only be unshed at night, the he-witch performs a unique ritual in which she calls up Hymir's soul and causes the head to speak straight into his mind. Amleth has to go to the mound dweller, where the sword is kept, and trust the moonlight to help him discover it. Amleth is also given one final prophecy by the he-witch. He will eventually have to decide between having compassion for his family and hatred for his adversaries. Amleth then discovers the dweller's body seated with the sword on his lap after entering a mound. The dweller awakens and attacks Amleth as soon as he tries to get the blade, forcing him to defend himself with any rubbish he can find around. Amleth recalls the he-witch's words and pushes the body under the moonlight as the dweller passes by the ray of moonlight that peeks through the mound's entrance. Amleth has the opportunity to murder the dweller when he freezes, but as soon as he turns around, he is back where he started, in front of the sitting guy. When he tries to steal the sword this time, he does it without any problems. When Amleth gets back to the farm, Fjolnir's dog sees him and begins to bark. Amleth growls at him to persuade him to stop talking, which causes Fjolnir to ignore the barking as insignificant and to miss Amleth. When Fjolnir approaches Olga to spend the night with her, she informs him that she is unavailable because it is her period. Additionally, she attempts to assault Fjolnir, but he dismisses her with ease and gives the headmaid instructions to teach Olga some manners before departing. Amleth observes all of this from his hiding place and believes that the time is ripe to strike, but he conceals the sword until the ideal moment arrives because the sun is rising and he is unable to unsheath it. When Amleth tells Olga about the sword the following day, she decides to assist since she also wants to be free. She can enter the kitchen, but Amleth makes sure to make it clear that he also plans to save his mother. Gudrun is merely another victim, and she complies with Fjolnir's requests in order to protect both herself and Gunnar. After that, Fjolnir meets with the chieftain and his people for a game of Natliker with his family and a chosen set of slaves. Killing is permitted as 2 teams of 5 warriors battle for a ball in order to score points. After being selected for Fjolnir's squad, Amleth is thrust into a cruel sport in which players gradually perish. Only Amleth and one formidable foe remain at the end. Gunnar gets enraged by Fjolnir's team's defeat and tries to take the ball to score, but the player from the other team attacks him. Amleth leaps to his defense and kills his opponent before Gunnar is slain after he is knocked unconscious. Thorir goes up to Amleth later on in the festivities to praise him on his bravery and loyalty. Amleth will now have advantages at the farm, including the ability to select a wife for himself, command the other slaves, and labor less. Thorir informs him that since Fjolnir has given up on Olga and her demeanor, he is even free to select her. Without hesitation, Amleth searches for Olga and leads her into the heart of the forest so they may work without anyone else observing. When they're finished, Olga communicates with Mother Soil and requests her protection using her powers. Additionally, they discover some unique mushrooms that will aid them in their revenge plot, which they want to begin once they get back to the farm. The following day is spent working as usual, but when night falls, Amleth kills 2 of Gunnar's friends by ambush. He forms a centaur out of their body parts and leaves it for the leaders to find in the morning. When he witnesses it, Gunnar is visibly incensed and vows retaliation against the Christians, thinking they were responsible, but Fjolnir is skeptical. After examining the dead, the priestess at the farm tells everyone that the wounds are not from this world and that the person who caused them is hungry for more and will attack again. Later that evening, Amleth incites all of the local animals to wail and bark as the priestess gets ready to sacrifice a girl to the gods for protection. Fjolnir must murder his dog in self-defense once he becomes enraged and attacks his master as a result. Amleth enters the temple, frees the girl, binds up the priestess instead, kills the priest, and hangs him at the altar while everyone is preoccupied with the animals. The male slaves are assigned a new task the next day, defending the farm from any approaching attack, while Amleth surreptitiously adds the mushrooms to the stew. The hallucinations that Fjolnir's troops have in the nighttime lead them to harm themselves or one another. Amleth goes into the main home and surprises his mother by admitting who he is after speaking with Olga to decide on a meeting place at daybreak. Although she is happy to see him alive, Gudrun has some startling news for him. She doesn't require rescue. When Arvandil told Amleth about his love affair with his wife, he had been lying. Gudrun had been a slave who had been taken by force by the king. She did not grieve him or adore him. She was actually the one who pleaded with Fjolnir to murder him. Instead of yelling on the day of the betrayal, she had been smiling joyfully because she was at last with the man she truly desired. Amleth is beginning to feel that he ought to murder Gudrun as well, but she reminds him that he is a kind man who cares deeply for his mother and brother. Gudrun would accept Amleth as her new king, and they could rule together if he were to murder Fjolnir and Thorir. Amleth doesn't fall for it, and leaves her to find Thorir, whom he kills in his bed. He then meets with Olga to inform her that he will be hiding in the hills, as Gudrun is aware of his identity, and he is no longer able to pretend to be a slave. They will complete their plan the following day. When Fjolnir discovers Thorir's body without the heart in the morning, he is overcome with sadness, and Gudrun informs him that Amleth was responsible. Fjolnir makes the decision to begin murdering slaves in order to force them to confess their knowledge. But Amleth steps in to stop him, just as he is ready to murder Olga. He demonstrates that he has Thorir's heart by putting on his prince necklace once more and revealing his true name. Amleth engages Fjolnir's soldiers in combat as they pursue him. After that, he lets them catch him. Amleth reveals that Thorir's heart actually belongs to the dog, but Fjolnir takes it back, believing he has won. In a fit of rage, Fjolnir beats and hangs Amleth in the barn to force him to reveal where Thorir's heart is, but Amleth won't. Though he vows to return later to complete the task, Fjolnir must depart for Thorir's funeral. One of the guys, believing Amleth's sword to be useless because it cannot be unsheathed, leaves it on the ground as they are leaving. A bunch of ravens arrive with a hooded man as soon as everyone has left, and they release Amleth. Gunnar is proclaimed the sole heir to the throne, and Thorir is given a dignified ceremonial funeral by the farm's residents. They then return to the barn to murder Amleth, but he has already left by the time they arrive. Amleth, meantime, is being transported to Valhalla by a Valkyrie on a horse, but he abruptly awakens and discovers that Olga was the one who saved him. Amleth must have been inspired to flee with her, because she returned for him, which must be a sign of fate. The pair finds a boat and is permitted to board it after a day of horseback riding. Amleth chooses to console Olga by kissing the scar on her neck. He sees the family tree once more as a result of this action. Because of this, Amleth finds out that Olga is expecting twins, one of whom will be the maiden king predicted by the seeress. Although this should be wonderful news, Amleth worries that as long as Fjolnir is alive, his children will never be safe. Amleth chooses to pick both, recalling that he was warned he would have to choose between hatred for his adversaries and kindness for his family. He gives Olga his prince necklace so she can ensure her future, disregarding her cries, and then he leaps off the ship. Olga summons the wind spirits to guard the ship's voyage as Amleth swims back to shore. As night falls, Amleth returns covertly to the farm and starts murdering all the warriors, enjoying the extra thrill of slowly destroying Finner with his remaining nose. Gudrun, brandishing a sword that Fjolnir had left her for protection, attacks Amleth. She lacks martial training, though, and Amleth may easily murder her by slitting her heart with a sword. Gunnar then appears and leaps on Amleth's back to stab him a few times, but Amleth quickly kills him as well after shaking him off. When Fjolnir arrives, he begs Amleth to meet him at the gates of Hell, which is the crater of the volcano Hekla, for a final, proper combat while he is gathering up the dead of his family. Before heading to the volcano, Amleth observes as the slaves burn down the farm. Before eventually meeting Fjolnir, Amleth bestows his benediction on Gudrun and Gunnar after discovering their bodies en route to the crater. Both men are excellent fighters, and although the fight is initially quite evenly matched, Amleth is already injured, so Fjolnir quickly overwhelms him. But Amleth's rage gives him the power to get back up, and after a few more hits, the two men simultaneously kill each other. A Valkyrie appears to take Amleth's soul through the gates of Valhalla after he faints and has a vision of Olga with his twins.